So hopefully, yeah, it's being live streamed. Okay. Awesome. It not like there's not going to go to too many people. Hopefully, we'll see whoever wants to come back and watch and get some benefit out of this. So that is the whole purpose. Record to the cloud. We'll do that as well. Because what I find is oftentimes I'm repeating like the same kinds of things, especially the initial part of my privy process and everything. Now I can just point people to like, go watch this video and get caught up on everything. And then we can use these calls then truly to answer new questions or, things that you guys want to get out of this. So again, my name is Ruchika. For those of you that don't know me, I think I've talked to all of you at least once before. Michelle N. I'm not sure if I've seen you before, but you may have been on a previous call, but welcome.
Thank you.
And so I started doing these Zoom sessions like about a few months ago, like I want to say 3 months ago, just because I was getting a lot of questions from folks about some of the success that I'd had with privy and wholesaling, which I was new to as of like less than a year ago, is when I started wholesaling. I've been in real estate a lot longer. I've had rental properties and done flip projects, but I was new to wholesaling. I found privy and was able to successfully complete. At this point, my count is 10, or not a 10 yet. I'm at 9. There's a 10th deal that I'm hoping to close soon, but yeah, so I'm almost at 10 deals in less than a year. It's been about 6 to 7 months that I've been wholesaling using privy. So a lot of people wanted to know my process, and they've watched the video with Benson where we went through my process, and it was just like I was getting all these questions. So I was like, let me just set up a call, get everyone who really is interested in learning on here, and I can answer your questions that way. But before that, I know a lot of people are new perhaps to the process and have not heard me talk about that before. If you're new to and want me to go through just at a high level, at least initially, on what I do in privy, how I find those properties, how I talk to the agents, send offers, all of that shebang. If you want me to go through that, just raise your hand if that's of interest to you or if you're new. Okay, cool. So Michelle's got her hand up. I know the other Michelle on this call also, it might be new to her, and Jessica as well. So I will spend maybe 10 to 15 minutes here just going through that process, just so you guys can kind of see that. And then I know there'll be lots of questions after that, and then we can tackle those questions. Hi, Rita. How are you? Thank you for turning on your video so I can see your beautiful face. And what I love is we're all women on this call. More power to us, right? That's awesome. I love it. Okay. All right. So let me share my screen and let's just jump right into privy and seeing kind of what that process looks like. So I'm not going to do a whole like demo of privy and all of that. That's not the purpose of this call. There's tons of training videos that you can watch on how to use privy. What I like about privy and that no other tool that I know of does this is it's got awesome data on not just properties that are on the MLS, but also off-market properties, but also like a lot of intelligence on properties that were bought by investors, what price they bought it for, what price they sold it for. So when you look at the map of the United States on privy, the blue dots or the blue colors really kind of show where all the investor activity is. So if you're a wholesaler or even an investor, but more importantly, a wholesaler looking to see where should I be wholesaling, like where are the investors at? This really helps you see that, right? Like where are they buying so that you can focus on getting properties under contract in those areas. So that's great. But even once you drill into that area, so let's say, I don't even know where I am here. I just clicked. This might be somewhere on the East Coast. No, I see Lake Michigan, but wherever I am, Tell me if anyone recognizes this area. I don't want to, but let me scroll out. Okay, now my mouse is doing all kinds of things. Let's go back to the Privy map. Let's look at Texas, because that's where I'm at. And again, I clicked too much, but it's generally showing me properties that it thinks is a good deal. Or there we go. There's the blue. So, you know, where the numbers are. So the big numbers, 295, 128, that's where you have a lot of investor activity. And that's what it's showing up here, right? And so you can focus on those areas. Now, as you get more rural, you'll see there's less investor activity. So as a wholesaler, you want an area, you want to wholesale in an area where there are enough buyers, right? The one thing is to find properties, but the other side of it is being able to find investors, especially in this market. The investors are being more selective about what they buy with the higher interest rates and just, you know, the way the market has turned a little bit since last year. So you do want to focus on areas where there is a high investor activity. And I see 956. If I drill in here, this is, where is this? I think we're in the Dallas region. No, Oklahoma City. We ended up in Oklahoma. So Oklahoma City, downtown Oklahoma, just north, there's a lot of investor activity, right? So you can actually drill in here and kind of see, drill down further. Maybe I'll pick this 120. And as I drill in more, once I get zoomed in enough, then you'll actually start seeing the list of properties on the left, which we saw earlier. Okay, so that's just generally like why I like Privy. You can see a lot of investor information. You can also see when you're looking at a property, and we'll look at that shortly, you can actually see what other investors have bought in that area, how much they bought it for, how much they sold it for. There's flip comps, so you can actually see what are other flippers doing. So this is a comp that was flipped. When I look at that flipped comp, I can actually see, and comp means comparable, right? I can see a map of other, you know, activity in that area. And I can actually see like this particular person that flipped this house, what did they do? How much did they buy it for? So here it says, this person bought the house for $255,000 and sold it for $429,000. It was on the market for 47 days. They held it for 49 days. So they flipped it pretty quickly. It shows construction days is 2 days. I don't know if that's all together, right? And then in this case, it doesn't have a lot of before pictures, but sometimes you can see the before pictures of the rooms and everything, and then the after as well, right? Wonder if this is a newer construction. Maybe this is not the best example, but you get the idea. So that's just about Privy. Now let me jump right into how I look for properties on Privy for wholesaling, right? So I've got various search criteria set up. So you can set up a search. So let's pull up like my Dallas, or let's look at my Fort Worth search. Okay, and I'll show you the criteria. This is a search that I set up and I've saved. So now it's showing me like the search results on the map and as a list. But the criteria that I have here is you can, like I put the location, so you can put in either a zip code or a city, or probably a state as well if you want to go that wide. Property type, which I'm focused on single family on these ones. Status active, because I'm looking for properties that are listed on the MLS, right? And so that's what it's a little bit different, right? There's a lot of wholesalers that go after properties that are on the market, but sorry, off market, where they're directly trying to contact sellers. And that works. It's worked for years, but now with this type of data, we can go after properties that are listed on the MLS with an agent. And the other thing I should mention is Privy has MLS access in certain states. Or I should say regions, because like within Texas, it's got MLS access in Dallas and San Antonio, but not in Houston, right? So it's only useful in those areas, but there's enough, you know, I think they're in Las Vegas, Chicago. There's enough markets where they have MLS access, right? So you can focus on those areas for wholesaling. Now, this is not just for wholesaling. You might be wanting to buy properties to hold yourself, buy and holds, or if you want to flip, if you're a flipper, right? And you could use the same process there. With wholesaling, it's just the only different approach there is now you're also trying to see where the other buyers are at, and if you can get that little bit of a spread to make an assignment fee, right? So that's the different approach for exiting, but the way you would find a property would be the same regardless of your exit strategy, if that makes sense. Okay, so let's continue here. So now it's got Privy's got some other filters down here where if you are looking for fix and flips that are 75% of the ARV, and for anyone that's kind of new to investing, ARV is after repair value, meaning if this house was repaired and renovated, what is the highest value that it could get on the market, right? So you're looking at other comps in the area that are updated homes and what's the maximum that you could get. And so here we're saying find us properties that are a good match for fix and flip and that are at 75% of what that ARV might be. So if a house in that neighborhood could sell, the highest value that it could sell for is, let's say, $300,000, right? Based on other comps there, then find me all properties that are listed at 75% of that 300,000. So that, what is that, like 225K? So it's going to bring up everything that's 225K or lower, right? So that's where we're trying to find a deal, something that's already listed as a good deal, and then we're going to try to get it at a lower price than that. In this search, I don't have any of this stuff up here selected. Price, in this particular one, I want to focus on the lower priced homes. So I have 250K as my max. And this is something I started doing lately is I do put days on market as 7 days and higher. You could even do 14 days and higher. And the idea there is you're looking for houses that have been listed on the market long enough where now the seller might start getting motivated, right? Because if it's just been listed, they might not be so interested in reducing the price, or they might have multiple offers and you don't want to get into that situation. So again, the idea here is we're looking for a property that is priced well, and Privy helps us figure that out with this part here. But also we're trying to find a motivated seller who we can work with to get a good price, because once we find a buyer, we might have to negotiate on that price again. So if the seller is motivated, that helps us. So then we run that search, and guess what? It's come up with 25 properties that Privy thinks matches your criteria. And there's also this Privy seal here that tells you that it's Privy thinks it's a good deal, right? And so I do try to, and you can select that in your search. And I did check that box, Privy preferred only, because I don't want to get a lot of results. So if you want fewer results back, you could check that box and just focus on the ones that are, good deals per Privy, right? So then I go through this list periodically, and I will try to look for homes. So let's look at this house, for example. It's listed for $190,000. The price was dropped recently, just a week ago. It's 1,810 square feet, 4-bed, 2-bath, built in 1925. So it's an older home. But okay, let's see. So then what I do is I look at the pictures to say, like, is this a good deal for an investor? Now, this one really quickly, I can see that the owner did some updates, but like you see the cabinets up here, they didn't finish that. They just did the bottom. They put granite. The flooring seems decent. So maybe it's not a new flooring here, but not painted. It's almost like they started the work and they didn't finish it. So then I would look at the comments here and see if it's, it says it's move-in ready, but it really is not. I probably wouldn't pick this property because it might be another investor that tried to flip it and then ran out of money or something like that. So I'm just going to skip that one. I'm trying to look for more of a property, perhaps like this, right? This one really looks like, at least from the outside, that it needs to be updated. Right? Now we're looking at the pictures inside. It does need to be updated for sure. So there is some value in an investor coming here, maybe as a flipper or even as a rental home, but they can add some value by renovating the property, right? So that's the first thing I look at real quick. I use a foldering system, which, and I put things into my lead list. And then I have like other folders as I go through the process, and I can talk through that part as well shortly. But anything that I like, I'll just go ahead and put into my current lead list. Right now we're in January, so it's in my January list, and I'll save it. I'll save it to come back later to comp and like look at more details. So at this stage, I just kind of go through this search and pick properties, cherry pick properties that I think might be a good ones to look at. So I'm just going to pick another one here. Not a lot of pictures. I also, when I'm looking at properties real quick, I do look down here at the map, right? So the comp comparables map, right? Now in Privy, the blue ones are the ones that are identified as investor with investor activity. And the ones that are just red are homes that were sold, but they were not investor comps. Green is anything that's active, and yellow or orange is pending. So what I want to look for is a house that has enough investor comps around it, and where our property is listed at about half the price of what the investor comps are showing me. So I do have this comp down here. It's $295. Ours is listed for $155. So that's about half. Could be a good one to look at. So I will then go ahead and add it to my list again. So that's how I kind of go through the search and find properties that I might want to put offers on. Okay, I'll pause there for a second for the newbies. I know this might be a lot. So any questions so far on any of this?
Yeah, I have a question. So what you do is, do you take a day and say, okay, I'm just going to look at properties and put them in my folder, and then the next day I'm going to call the listing agent? Is that what you do?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So yeah, because I have a full-time job and I only spend a couple of hours on real estate a day, right? The way I like to compartmentalize my time or plan my time is, if I have 30 minutes here or an hour there, I'll sit and do this activity, because this activity takes a different mindset than calling agents or comping properties or finding buyers or whatever those other stages are, right? So yeah, I'll get a block of time, and all I'll do is this part first. Then the same day or a different time when I'm ready for my next step, then I'll go in and actually do the comping part. So we can actually jump to that step. So these are a couple of these are ones that we added just now. I'm going to pull up this one just randomly, and let's see if we can comp it. So that's the next activity. And again, I'll sit and do this for 5 or 10 properties while I'll sit and comp them. I use the notes feature a lot to write down my views or my thoughts on the ARV comps that I've looked at, the agent information. So when I'm in this next step, I want to get everything ready to go to call my agent next. So I put agent info, the ARV comps, as well as what offer I want to make on this house. Right. So I'll walk you through that step right now. So that's kind of the underwriting phase, right? That's the next phase. When I'm done with the underwriting phase, then at a different time, when I have like an hour, a block of time, like an hour or 2 hours, then I'll just go through my call agent folder. That's why I've got these folders. So I move properties between these folders, so I have everything in one place. Then I'll go through my call agent folder, and then I'll call all the agents. And I've got all my notes right there, so I know exactly what I need to ask the agent or offer to the agent. But before we get to that, let's go through underwriting, and then I'll talk about that call agent step. So as far as underwriting, again, we started looking at some of this. So I'll look at other comps in that area. So here, I want to look at the blue comps. So if I scroll down here, there's actually a table, right? What you'll notice is some of these comps have 2 numbers listed here under price. And that's pretty cool too, because Privy is telling me that this person flipped the house, they bought it for $172,000 and they sold it for $230,000. This was the same thing that we had looked at when we were, so if I click into that comp, I want to make sure that it is truly a flip. It is a flip. It was beautiful, actually. They did a really good job. They sold it in October. It's a 2-1 1926 built. So it's a true comp. And then if I scroll down here, remember we were looking at the before and after. Since this is an investor comp, it's got that information, right? What the investor bought it for, how much they sold it for. So this can give us a lot of good information. It's like, okay, this investor bought it for 172. Now they bought it in the peak of the market, right? Because if they sold it in October, actually it'll tell us, they held it for 227 days. So they had it for a good amount of time. So they bought it probably at the peak. So we don't want to pay, an investor today probably wouldn't pay that much, right? Just something to keep in mind. But coming back here to this part, so this is a comp. They sold in October, which is the last 3 months. Because of how quickly the market's changing, we want to make sure we only look at comps that are in the last few months. Even pending comps sometimes give us a better picture of what the current market trend is, right? Because something that sold for 250,000 last summer is not going to sell for that much now, right? So that's not a good comp. This one, yes, because it's October. This one here is another one. This one sold in December. If I look at the pictures here, this is also looks like it's updated. Yeah. Now Privy, and so that's why Privy flagged this as a investor comp. You see, I'm only looking at the blue ones. So based on this, I think I can say that the ARV of this property is 225K, right? So I will take a note of that. I'll say ARV 225K. Right, so that's one of the things I would write. And the comps are right there. But if I want to be more thorough in my notes, I would write down the address and the amounts that they sold for in my notes as well. I won't do that today. The other thing then next we want to do is we want to look up this agent, right? So Privy has the listing office or the broker's name and phone number, but this is the office. This is not the agent's number. So what I do is I do have another tool that I use, but one way to look up this number would be just to search on Google for this person. They popped up right there. And usually through a Google search, you can, again, this is the company, not maybe he owns, yeah, it looks like he might be the broker. Is that the same number? 817, okay, 8088. Let me see if that was the one we found or that Privy had. Let's see. No, it's a different number, right? So then I will just take a note of I'll write the agent's name and phone number in my notes. I won't do that right now, but that way I have everything ready to go. When I need to call the agent, I can look in my notes. I've got their number, I've got their email, I've got the offer price. So then how do I determine the offer price, right? So really quick back of the envelope type of thing is just to do a flat 50 to 60% of ARV. So anything that needs, this is ours, right? Yeah, anything, this one is a rehab, but it's not a complete, like we can keep, like the floors, some of the floors can be saved. This bathroom looks okay. So it's not I would call it a medium flip, not a large flip. So based on that, I'll kind of decide how I want to do this as far as the offer. But you guys are probably familiar with the MAO formula, right? I know a lot of people use this. It's the maximum allowable offer, which normally people go at like between 70 to 80% of the ARV minus the repairs, right? This would involve some sort of idea of what the repairs would cost to update the house. We've got the ARV. So let's say that my estimate for this, so I'll show you how to comp it that way, and then I'll show you a different way. So this is a 1,040 square foot house, right? It's 3 bedroom, 1 bath. You could say if it's a mid-level flip, it's about $40 a square foot for mid flip or medium flip. So at $40 a square foot, 1,000 square feet, about $40,000 in repairs, right? So if I do repairs, just again, these are all guesstimates. And the reason is we're wholesaling this, we're not buying it for ourselves. So the way I do it is I let the buyers come in and actually confirm that number. Like I'll use feedback from the buyers to tell me, oh, you know what? The repairs are going to be 75,000 because it needs a new roof and a new AC and the foundation's messed up, whatever, right? Then I know that maybe my price was too high, and I'll use that to negotiate with the seller on a reduction on price, right? But at this point, we have to make some estimate so that we can move forward and make an offer, right? So just high level math, again, back of the envelope type of calculation. If the repairs are 40K, then based on this MAO formula, right? Let's just pull up a calculator. If I do on the higher end, 80% of 225, which is my ARV, I'm at 180 minus 40 for the repairs. So based on the MAO formula, my offer price would be 140,000. Did I do that right? Yes. Now, I would also then look really quick. So that's my MAO formula. The asking price is 162. So that's good. We are lower, but we're not that much lower. Yeah, good question, Michelle. Whether the price per square foot, it will be market dependent. So I'm speaking for Texas where I wholesale. So we would need to adjust those numbers for more expensive markets like New York or Connecticut or California, right? For smaller markets, maybe it's cheaper, it's less. So yeah, we would have to tweak that number. And I'm just going to tell you that, yeah. So what I was going to say there was that I don't, this is a number that I like to know, like, okay, what's the MAO formula? What's that number look like? I don't always use this formula because calculating those repairs can be tricky, right? And I don't want to spend a whole lot of time right now underwriting because I want to put more offers in, right? And you never know. When you talk to the agent, it may be a no-go at that point because they don't want a long option period, right? For wholesaling, we need at least 10 days to be able to find a buyer, right? Well, you get on the phone with the agent, the first thing they say is, we don't want any wholesalers and 3-day option period. Well, all that work you just did is wasted in some ways because now you can't pursue it further. So I don't want to spend a whole lot of time in the comping and get stuck in an analysis paralysis. I want to get to the next stage and then kind of figure some things out as we go, right? So this is the MAO formula. There's another easy formula, which is 50 to 60% of ARV that I want to offer somewhere in that range, right? And so if I go with that, 50% of 225 is what? 225 divided by 2, 112,000, and 60% is
135. Okay.
Thank you. 135K. So I want to be in that range. So that is lower than what my MAO formula gave me. And it could be that my repairs are a little bit low, right? Maybe it will cost more. I also do look at so I'm going to save my notes here. I also do look at the comments here from the agent to see if there's anything there that would tell me if it has a new roof or, whatever repairs it might need. In this case, there's not much here. Okay, so now that I'm here, so now I just need to quickly decide when I talk to the agent, what am I going to tell them as my offer price? I think just based on all of these, I'm going to go with the 140, 135. So I'm going to tell the agent that I want to offer 130 to 140K. Again, there's no science to this. It's more like I want to be lower than they're asking, but I don't want to lowball too much because obviously my offer is not going to get accepted. And I'd rather get my offer accepted and then try to work out a reduction if we need it once I get actual feedback from buyers, right? Because at this point, it's all just on paper. These are numbers that we're just estimating, right? The reality might be completely different. And we won't know that till the buyer actually gets in there. Because remember, we haven't seen the house. We haven't, what you traditionally think of when you buy a house, you're going to go walk it, you're going to go look at it, assess repairs, everything. We're not doing any of that because we're not buying the house. So this is how I've learned to save time, is just pick a range. It usually, what I found is we want to be about 15 to 20% under the asking price. So 20% of 60, the 20% would be about 30,000 under, which would be about that 130 number, right? And so again, this is all like just having done this now for a few months and kind of coming up with a system here that we can replicate. You want to be lower because you want to leave enough of a spread for your assignment fee, right? So let's say hypothetically that our offer for 130K gets accepted. We want to add to at least, let's say 10,000 as our assignment fee. So then we would market it to the buyers at 140, right? So by being at least 15 to 20% under asking, we've got enough room to add our assignment fee. And then for the end buyer to still think that this is a good deal, right? If I get this locked up at 150 and I'm asking for 160 from my end buyer is going to say, oh, that's only like $2,500 under what it's listed for. I could go contract it on my own at that price. Like, I don't see this as a deal, right? But if you're marketing it for 140, they might be like, oh, that's 20K under asking. Yeah, it might sound like a deal to them, right? So you want to also keep in mind that spread between your offer and the asking price. Okay, so any questions there so far on the comping part of it? Okay, like I said, it's more of an art, not a science, and it's different for each property. But the more you do this, the more you get into like a flow of how to do this. And again, don't overthink that. So let's say then, which one were we looking at?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Sorry, I have a question about, it looks like the lists you were making, did you have some of them by date?
You mean this list?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, let me tell you, my main list that I start with is I just rename this folder every month just to make it really current. And that I know every month at the end of the month, like now we're almost at the end of the month, I'll look at everything in that folder, flush things out, and just rename it to February 2023. You could just name it like your active lead list as well. It doesn't matter. So no, I don't do it by month or date or anything like that.
Okay. And then if you put something in that folder, does it always remain in that folder until it's sold?
Yeah. So actually it remains in the folder even if it's
Forever.
sold. Yeah, even if it's sold forever till you take it out. So I can show you some of that in a second here. I just wanted to show you moving the folder. So now that I've comped it, I will move it to my other folder now to call the agent, right? So now everything is ready to go. I can call the agent and give them my offer range. So I'll talk to them about that in a second. But I do want to show you, like, you see how this 2921 Avenue K is still in my folder. The yellow shows that it's actually pending now. It's under contract. So when that happens, I move it over to like another folder, like a watching folder, just to see like, hey, if it could fall through, the contract could fall through and it could become active again. So I always put it in my watching folder. So it's out of this folder, my active folder, but it's in another folder that I'm watching. Now, if you see, some of the ones in my watching folder turned to red, meaning they're sold. So then at this point, I really don't have any use for these. So I would then just remove them from here so they're not cluttering my folder. But I also sometimes just like to go back and see, what did it actually sell for? So Larry Drive, for example, it sold for $216 in December. Let me see if I had my notes. My ARV was 310 on this. I don't have a lot of notes. ARV was 310 and it sold for 216. So it sometimes just helps me get more educated on like, okay, what's the current status? Like, what are the houses selling for, right? I might look at that on these solds and then I'll just get them out of this folder. I see some of them are still pending, but then I do see this one, which I don't trust because it's orange. So the blue is the ones that Privy has MLS data on, and orange is what it says is third-party data. For some reason, it doesn't have MLS data on it, so I don't trust that one as much. But what I'd be looking for in this watching folder is, did anything turn to green? Meaning now I can follow up with that again, right? So I use that folder for that.
And those sellers are probably really motivated because they thought that they were about to sell their house and then they're not. So they're probably a little more desperate, right?
Exactly. Yeah. If it comes back on the market, those are good deals. Yeah. And they might reduce the price further, even on the MLS. So now we can go lower on our price. Yep. So absolutely. Yeah.
Actually, Richie, I just had, oh, sorry.
No, yeah, go ahead, Michelle.
So the question I have is, I have third-party data because Privy is not in Massachusetts at this point. So I can get most of this data and I can cross-reference it as an agent by going to MLS, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay,
You would do
awesome.
all of this. You could still do the foldering and everything in Privy if you like the way you could, if you want to manage your lists here, if you've got a
Yes.
better way. Yeah. So that if you've got in your MLS, I don't know if it allows you to create folders and like.
No, not at all.
Right.
No. So I could use this for almost everything, except I'm just sort of
Pumping.
not getting the direct MLS data at this
Doing
point.
the comps, yeah. So that stage that we just went through, the step that we just went through of comping, you would do that on the MLS. You could still take your notes here, right? And then be ready to call the agent and you've got all your notes right here, right?
Okay, so I won't really be able to do the comps, like you said, because it's third party.
You,
Oh,
you can,
interesting.
You can
You
look
can-
to see like how good is the data, like maybe the third party data is not that bad in your market. I can't speak to that because I have not looked at a market with third party data to really validate how good that data is. But my understanding is that that data comes from like Redfin or
Yes.
like a third
I
party.
was- Yeah, no, I was just gonna ask you, do you cross-reference with Zillow or Redfin or anything like that in you looking at your comps, so you don't use them at all, their values?
I do not use a lot of those for these comps. I do use Zillow for the rent comps. So if I think a property is a better fit for rental and then maybe a buy and hold investor might be a good fit for this one, then I might look at rental comps there. If Privy has all the data, it's got the pictures, it's got the comps and everything, then there's no need to go.
Exactly. Okay, thank you.
you
Sure.
might want to try to get some deals in a market where there is direct to MLS data just to kind of get your feet wet.
Yes.
And get to know how to like use Privy because really like what makes Privy so powerful is having that data and then it comes in live. So without that, it kind of, I wouldn't say fully defeats the purpose of using it, but the value is in the MLS data. So you might want to try a high investor activity area that maybe isn't your direct neighborhood, but at least just to get a couple of deals and get familiar with the process.
For sure.
Yeah, I'll have to reach out to Rajika on that because it's not in Massachusetts at all, and my markets are like Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Maine.
Got it. Yeah, and again, so one thing I want to say is, so I live in Houston. Privy does not have MLS access in Houston, so I don't wholesale in Houston. I wholesale in Dallas or San Antonio because it does have MLS access. And all the properties that I've wholesaled so far, I have not had to walk even one of those properties. So I can virtually do all of this because it's all by phone and email. Like you don't.
Right.
The people that are going to look at the property are your buyers. So your buyers are going to walk the property and they're going to give you all the input you need to negotiate if needed, right?
Right. I'll have to
So,
work with you on that. That's the realtor in me, is that it's hard
Yeah.
for me to take my hands off the wheel,
right.
you know?
I hear you. I hear you. And I know realtors don't like the fact that, you're putting an offer sight unseen, right? But there's no point seeing it because we're not buying it, right?
Right.
We want to get the actual buyers to see it, who are going to buy it. So yeah, it's a little bit of a shift in thinking, right? To take off that realtor hat and put on like a wholesaler hat. And I had to do some of that too, because I had not wholesaled. Like I started wholesaling in June of last year, right? And before that, I was buying for myself. So I have my own rentals. So I was looking at it. I was trying to like comp it like as if I was buying it and like spending a lot of time on that. And then I was like, wait, hold on. I don't need to do all of that. I need to find a simpler way to comp these and just move on and get them locked in. What's more important is to get these under contract and then that's only half the work, right? Once you get it under contract, then you've got to market it to the buyers. And then that's when you'll know whether your number was too high or too low. If it was too low, that's good. You make more money. But yeah, and oftentimes the number may be high. Like I would say, actually, out of all the wholesale deals, which is close to 10 deals now, I've had to go back and ask for a reduction on all. I can
Wow, and they've let you do it.
I actually, yeah. And it's just that because on the properties that are listed on the MLS, the seller is trying to get the maximum that they can get, right? And so a lot of these properties are overpriced, like just based on their condition and what an investor would be willing to pay for it. And these are not homes that end buyers are going to buy because they don't want to do all this work. So you are targeting investors, and investors look at numbers differently. So they are overpriced for an investor. And so the work we're doing, we're actually helping both the agent and the seller, because we're actually taking a property that's listed too high and that might not sell at that price, and really helping them figure out what that right price is. Because we're sending it out to thousands of buyers. We're getting, feedback from these buyers, and we're going to pick the highest price from those buyers. So we're really doing that job of filling that gap, of finding an investor. So that's kind of, if you switch that thinking that, and I'll tell you, for every deal that we've closed on, everyone's been super happy. The seller is happy. They sold their house and they got cash for their house. They closed faster than they would have with financing. The agent's happy. They're getting paid. Like, it doesn't matter to them if we bought it or we wholesaled it. They get their commission, right? The buyer's happy. They've hopefully got a good investment property now that they can flip or rent or whatever. So at the end of the day, everyone's happy, everyone gets paid. And so it really is fulfilling at the end of the day. I know during the process, it might feel like, we're adding our fee and blah, 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 whatever, or that we're not telling the agent always upfront that we're wholesaling. And it doesn't matter to them, right? At the end of the day, they want the deal to close. And I think that's the one thing that I always say is, like, no matter what exit strategy we end up using on this one, because I've got multiple partners that I work with, our aim is to make sure that we get to closing. And Michelle, who was asking me that? Was it
It was me.
Michelle, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
As an agent, that's what matters at the end of the day, right?
That's right. We want to get paid.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I can definitely be objective on that. And they just don't want to play games with investors that can't step up and get it done. But if you can get it done, they don't care how you do it.
Exactly right.
It's an area of pain for them to have that listing not selling.
Exactly.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so now I know we have like just a little bit of time here. So I want to quickly talk about like my process of calling the agents, and I think that would be it for today as far as what, and then I'll take other questions. But so my conversation with the agent goes like this. So first thing, most agents don't pick up the phone, unfortunately. One of the students that is in the partnership program just told me this morning that she called 8. Is she on this call? No, she's not. Okay. She called 8 agents. None of them picked up. And so what we do is we follow up with a text message, right? And usually we hear back via text. But if I were to get the agent on the phone, then my first, what I would say is, hey, Michelle, I'm just going to use as an example. Hey, Michelle, my name is Chika. I'm an investor, and I came across your property on 2624 Beaumont Avenue. Is this property still available? Right. And they'll say yes. And then I'll say, I'm an investor. I don't have an agent representing me. Are you able to represent both sides? Right. So that is kind of the secret sauce, very honestly, is to see if the agent is able to represent both sides, because now they're going to be your friend in the process, right? And they're going to help you more. Like you're going to be able to talk to them, and even when it comes to price reductions or whatever, they're representing both sides. So they're a little more incentivized too, right? Now they're getting both sides of the commission. So I always start with that question, because that changes the whole direction of the conversation, right?
And can you say that language again? I don't have an agent. Can you represent me, or what do you say?
Yeah. So I say, I don't have an agent representing me. Are you able to represent both sides? And in Texas, that's called an intermediary relationship, where they're not truly representing both sides. They're really just doing the paperwork for both sides. They're not allowed to advise either parties because now they're privy to both sides, right? So privy. Okay. I use privy in a different way today.
I think we did that.
So they'll either say 9 out of 10 times in Texas, they'll say, yeah, sure, I can represent both sides. That's not an issue. I can write up the offer for you, right? So that's good. Occasionally they'll say, no, my brokerage does not allow me to represent both sides, or my seller doesn't want me to do that, right? Which is fine. And then I'd say, and that's fine. We've submitted tons of offers and we can represent ourselves and that's where kind of I know how to fill out the TREC form, the Texas Real Estate Commission contract. So I know how to fill that out. And so Michelle, you being an agent, you would know how to fill it out in certain states. But in Texas, I can show you guys how to fill that out. So if they can't represent me, then I'll fill out the offer myself and send it. If they can represent me, then I will, then I'll just work through them, right? So that's the first thing. Then I will go into asking about the condition of the property. So in wholesaling, like there's the 4 pillars of wholesaling where 4 pillars of what you need to know from the seller, right? So one is motivation. So why are they selling? Condition, price, which with an on-market property, you know what they're expecting to get for price. And then the last is the timeline, right? How quickly do they need to sell? So I'll try to go into questions around those 4 pillars to understand the condition of the property. Like, oh, hey, I looked at the pictures. It looks like it's in decent condition, but it does need some updating. And usually the agent will say, yeah, it's been, they've lived there for how many ever years. And, yeah, it does need to be updated. And then I'll ask about the majors. So like the roof, the air conditioning, foundation, what's the condition of those? And during that conversation, I'm taking notes in Privy, right? So that way I have my whole conversation there and I know kind of where to go from there. So I'll ask about condition and during the conversation, if I can find out why the seller is selling, that the motivation, right? That would be good. Like, so I'll be, if they don't volunteer it, then I'll be like, oh, is it still occupied or is the owner still living there? So then in this case, it looks like the owner's still living there, right? I see all their stuff in there. So then if they're living there, then, hey, are they going to move to another town? Or are they looking for a bigger house? Or I'll try to figure out why they're moving, right? And then I'll get the story around that. And that shows me motivation. So a couple of the deals that I've closed on, the seller was moving out of town to another city and they really needed to sell fast. So they were motivated to work with us on the price and because they were getting a quick close. Right. Or maybe it's a couple of seniors that are moving into their daughter's house. So again, so that helps with the motivation and the timeline. So then I'll find out all of that and take my notes. And then I'll tell them that I will get back to them on my offer. Right. Basically, that's all that is. Right. And then really quickly, I'll come back. I'll kind of, wait. No, important thing. This range. So I always throw that range, my offer range out there and tell the agent so I can gauge if I'm in the ballpark. And sometimes when I do that, the agent will tell me information like, hey, I know they just rejected an offer for 140 or 130, whatever. So then that tells me, oh, then I need to be a little bit higher than that or whatever, right? Or no, the seller is not going to accept anything under 150, whatever that information is. Throwing out a range helps me get that intel. So what I'll say then is, just based on my initial analysis and looking at the pictures, I'm in the 130 to 140K range for this property. What do you think? Like, that's all I'd say. And then I'll let them kind of, again, give me their input on that part. And so that's important information. And then I'll say I'll get back to them. And then very quickly, I'll look at my notes. I figure out what they just said. If they said they rejected an offer at 130, then I'll offer 135, right? And then from there, it's just sending an email to them with the offer terms, which is just like a really simple email. Let me see if I have one that I can pull up here. Is this, yeah, one of the people in the partnership program just submitted this today. It's just your buyer name, how much you want to offer, and it's a cash offer, the closing date, how much EMD you want to put down, and then the option period. And I know today we don't have a lot of time to go into this stuff, but just to show you, it's a really simple email. So not rocket science or anything. The main thing to figure out is what price, right, you want to offer. And again, this is assuming that they can write up the offer for you. Where was I? I lost my spot. Yeah, this is assuming that they can write up the offer for you. So you don't need to provide anything more than what's needed in that offer form. So that's about it. I mean, you stop right there. Any questions?
I have a question. So when you started wholesaling, were you using an LLC or just your personal name?
Good question. So I know a lot of people get caught up about, oh, I need to set up my LLC before I can submit offers, right? It is a good idea to have an LLC, but the LLC is of no use if you're not closing any deals, right? So I would say, even if you have to submit an offer on your personal name, just to get going, right? I believe in, I've heard this from somewhere else, so I'll quote it. What is it? Imperfect action is better than perfect inaction, right? So if you're taking action, if you're taking that step of submitting offers, it may not be perfect because you don't have your LLC maybe, or you don't know the right words to say. It's imperfect, but you're going to learn so much from it as long as the risk is low, right? You're not putting $50,000 down or $5,000 down even, right? With this scenario, what you have to lose is, the only thing you have to lose with this sending this offer is that your offer gets accepted. That's not too bad. That sounds like a win to me, but the loss could be you don't find a buyer and you lose your option money. In Texas, that's what you have. It's like you have this option period or an inspection period. You pay, in my case, what I recommend is $50 to $100 for that 10-day option period. And you can you can cancel the contract during that period for any reason. You don't have to give any reason for canceling. So the only thing you have to lose is that $50 or $100. But guess how much you've learned, right? So again, I wouldn't overthink the LLC. I would put the offer under your personal name. And then again, the worst that can happen there is what? That you get under contract under your personal name. You find a buyer. So you actually, which is again, once you get it under contract, my experience is like 50% of the deals, you find a buyer, 50% they fall through, right? So it's about 50-50 is my record on that and what I found. So if you're lucky enough to get your offer accepted and find a buyer in all of this in your personal name, and you make a $5,000 assignment fee, I'm saying on the lower side, maybe $10,000. If you've got to pay taxes on that on your personal income tax, like is that so bad, right? Oh, I would rather do that, or rather do that than just be like, I need to set up my LLC, and it takes you 2 months to set up an LLC, or 1 month or whatever, and you're bogged down by all the operating agreement and everything that you need to do to get everything right before you start. I would rather you start and start gaining some experience. So yeah, I wouldn't overthink the LLC, but yes, once you start doing deals and you've got the process down and you're closing deals, you want to do the LLC so you can take all your business expenses and, like your subscriptions, like your Privy monthly cost, all of that can be used as an expense against your business. So that will reduce your tax liability. So there's not a lot. The other reason to set up an LLC is for liability reasons, like you don't want to get sued on your personal name or whatever. Wholesaling is safe that way because you're not the seller, you're not the buyer, you're just the middleman, you're just collecting an assignment fee. So there's not much of a legal risk here.
And thank you. And what do you do with the for the earnest money deposit and proof of funds?
Good question. So yeah, so liability reasons, like you don't want to get sued on your personal name or whatever. Wholesaling is safe that way because you're not the seller, you're not the buyer, you're just the middleman, you're just collecting an assignment fee. So there's not Okay, I'm back. That was the first time I went live on YouTube and I opened a window where this live YouTube was playing. So I was hearing myself and I'm like, which window do I need to close? Okay, got that figured out. Okay, so as far as the EMD and option money, so in Texas, once you're under contract, I think we've got like 48 business hours, so or 2 days to get the EMD to title. So that is a check that I do write out. So like usually the earnest money is 1% of the offer price. It's not required, but that shows that you're serious, right? I mean, you could put 0 EMD down, but obviously the seller or the agent's not going to take you seriously at that point. I like to do 1%. So if my offer is $100,000, that's $1,000 and $100 for the option fee. So the $1,100 in that example, I would write a check out to title and send it. But I know that I'm going to get my EMD back in 10 days. Either I get my EMD back or I find a buyer and I'm able to close on the deal, right? So in which case I get my EMD back and my assignment fee. Cool.
I have a question. I don't want to steal her thunder, though. Do you have any more questions? Whoever that was.
Just the proof of funds part.
Oh, yeah. Proof of funds. So proof of funds actually is really easy to get. So you have these hard money lenders, right? These are lenders that lend at a high interest rate for a short period of time to investors, right? And so they might lend you money for 6 months at a 12% interest rate, right? While you're doing your fix and flip or whatever, right? So these are hard money lenders. They lend based on the asset. It's called asset-based lending, I guess, and versus your personal, credit score or whatever else, right? Your financial situation. So these hard money lenders are the ones that will give you your proof of funds. All you need to do is reach out to them and say, I'm an investor looking to buy an investment property this year. Could you give me a proof of funds? And that's all you need to do. And they will ask you for what amount. You say 500,000. That should be enough to cover any property that you put an offer on. And they will just give you, they will say, XYZ LLC, will lend. So, will lend this person $500,000. So that's all you need is a letter from them to then submit as your proof of funds.
What if you have no assets?
They're not going to look at your assets. They're not going to look at anything. You just tell them you're an investor, you're looking to buy properties, and that you may need a loan from them for that in the future. And they don't mind doing that, right? Because you're another customer for them. And if you do end up buying something, they're going to lend based on the house that you're buying, not on your personal situation. So the way they run the numbers is that just like what we just looked at, they're going to look at like the comps and the ARV and all of that. And then they're going to figure out how much they can lend on that property. So they do all of that based on the property, not the person.
And then do you need an LLC to get that, or will they do it for a person?
Good question. I'm trying to think. You could tell them, honestly, that I'm a new investor. I don't have an LLC yet, and just ask them if they would give it to you on your personal name. Mostly what I've seen is it is on the LLC that they do that. They do require that LLC. And
it's super simple to get one. Don't you agree?
Oh, yeah. Setting up an LLC is not hard at all. Yeah. I've used Prime Corporate Services to set it up in the past. They charge $650 for an LLC in Texas, because $300 of that goes to the state so if you were to set it up yourself, you would have to pay $300. It's a couple $100 more to get them to set it up. But I know in other states, it's less expensive. Like I think we did one in Kentucky and it was like $400 is what Prime Corporate Services charge. So you can do it yourself or you can have them do it. They'll do it within a week. So,
and I did it cheaply, if I may volunteer. Last year, or actually 2 years ago, when I started wholesaling, I went to New Hampshire, referred by a friend. Cost me $100. I did it right through the and I was feeling cheap because it's $500 for Massachusetts. So I was like, oh, I'm not really feeling that. So because I said I'm not taking ownership of the property, let me save myself $400, and I just did it that way.
Got it. Okay.
So my mother worked at Marshall's for 25 years. I don't like to pay full price for anything.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, if you can do it yourself, more power to you. I know I set up my first few myself. It's not that hard. So yeah, if you want to save some money, that's the way to go. Yeah.
I got a couple of questions for you, if I may.
Yes, for sure.
First of all, do you tell them that you're waiving inspection? And if you do, are you doing a due diligence period? How are you doing that? Is it you just calling it a 10-day due diligence period as you're looking for your buyer? But
Okay.
of course, you're not telling them that you're looking for a buyer.
Yeah. Hey, Michelle. So firstly, is it just me or I'm hearing this echo?
I know I'm hearing myself twice and I don't know how to do that.
Are you on here twice? You're on here twice. There's two. Are you connected through two devices? Because I see
You know what? Let me disconnect my phone. Hold on a second here.
Yeah, just mute yourself or remove the audio from one of those. Like disconnect from audio.
Okay.
Okay. And then I'm looking through the comments here. So Diana, thank you, Diana. Diana's link to some of the, like, I'm assuming this is a hard money lender, Diana, Easy Street Capital, and then besttransactionalfunding.com. Perfect. Yeah, that's great.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. The second part of my question is, what are you using for a contract? If you're writing your own contract, if they're not representing you, hey, my brokerage won't let me represent you, blah, blah, blah. You're like, okay, that's okay. We can represent ourselves. What are you using for a contract? Because obviously I'm a realtor, so I would typically use a regular, contract to purchase. Should I use that or no?
Yes, you should use that. That's what I use. So I actually ended up taking the training to be a realtor in Texas. So I learned how to fill out the Texas form. I decided not to pursue that because I wanted to do more of things like this on my own.
Mhm.
But yeah, I use the actual form that the contract that the realtors use to fill out. Yeah. Because if not, then you have to go get a buyer's agent. So the other thing I'll say there is that this is how I do it. But if you're not comfortable filling out the form, which Michelle, I know you are because you're an agent in that state, but if you're putting an offer in Texas or Georgia or something like that, one way to get started is to get a buyer's agent to represent you to do that part. If the listing agent doesn't want to, right? First option, always have the listing agent represent you, even if you can write it up yourself. Because then, as I said, they're going to be incentivized, highly incentivized to make the deal happen, right? And so when it comes to price reductions, they'll kind of fight on your behalf. I'll give you an example. We just, one of the members of the partnership program just closed. I think I put that success story because I'm just so happy to announce that. I don't know why I didn't bring that up earlier. He joined the program in December, he has a full-time job, but he put in 6 offers in December, got 1 under contract. And after that, stopped putting offers in, which I would never recommend. I'm always like, keep putting offers, even if you have something under contract. And so that one it was a roller coaster ride. We had a buyer who backed out. So it fell out of contract and then we got it back under contract. It was a long story, but long story short, I wanted to give you guys the numbers. So it was listed for $315,000. Okay. Our initial offer was at $280 because we thought the ARV was about $550. Okay. So we thought the ARV was $550. About half of that is $275, right? So we were at $280 with our initial offer. Well, after the first time we got it under contract, that buyer was going to be at $270. So we got it reduced to $260, right? So we would have that $10K spread. Well, that buyer backed out and our contract canceled. So we were like, okay, whatever. And then another buyer popped up and said, I'll buy it for $260. So we're like, okay, let's go back and get it at $250 now. So right, we were at $280, $260. Now we're trying to get it at $250. They said, oh, you know what? We're already under contract with another seller, but their option period is 3 days. If that doesn't work out, then we'll come back to you, right? Luckily, that didn't work out, and they came back to us, and we said, okay, we've got this buyer at $260. Let's go with $250. They were only going to give us a 3-day option period because we'd already gotten 10 days in the first time around. So we said 3 days is fine, not a problem. We've got the buyer already. Well, that buyer backed out too.
Hmm.
And now we're at 250, right? 250. We started at 280. We're at 250. We're like, okay, let's find some buyers. Let's find some buyers. We found a buyer at 250. So we're like, oh, we're not going to make any money. We were able to get the buyer up a couple of thousand, like they were up to 253. So we're like, oh, maybe we'll make $3,000 on this and call it a day, right? But we said, well, the seller does seem motivated. They've been in and out of contracts for a bit. Let's try to get it lower. So we tried to get it at 230. We didn't get it at 230. We said we might take through 40, but the seller agreed to 235. So we started at 280. We ended up at 235. Our buyer was at 253. So there was an $18,000 assignment fee. We had to give $5,000 to the wholesaler who brought us the buyer. The end buyer, this wholesaler brought this buyer to us. So we're like, okay, we'll give you 5,000. So we kept 13,000. So that was kind of the story on that. But the reason I brought that up is there was a question about price reduction, something. I don't know what I was trying to say there, but we are going to have to go back for reductions. Like that's the reality of the way things are. And that's why it's so important to find a motivated seller, right? Because, I mean, I can tell you that if they did not accept our offer, they might not have been able to sell it at that price. I mean, they might have gotten 250, okay? So, but we cut that process and we closed in 6 days. We went under contract on Wednesday and we closed the Tuesday of just this past Tuesday. So in less than a week, so the seller's problem was solved. They could have tried to get 250, but they might have had to wait longer, right? So we got them the sale, we got them, the highest price that the market would get them. We kept a little bit of a fee for it, but at the end of the day, everyone's happy. So I don't know why I brought that up. I think it was something around pricing that we were talking. So I do want to really quickly, I know some of you guys have asked, and I know some folks have dropped off as well, the ones that had asked, but I do want to really quickly just mention that I do have this partnership program where I know a lot of folks want that hand holding. And that's what I did with Roshan was like, we worked on like every time there was like this googly, right? Like, oh, this buyer's backed out. Now what do I do? Or negotiating with the seller. Like literally we were talking almost every day at that point where I was able to guide him. And I can't do that for everyone, unfortunately. So I wanted to see more people do this since I know that this model works, but I don't have the time. So I came up with this kind of idea that let me do this partnership program. There's a little bit of cost to it because it does take my time away from other things to kind of coach through the process. But and then we partner on the deal. So I actually put down the EMD and the option money if you want that. I don't have to, but I'm happy to put it down for the deals that we do together. And what I said that was that we would go 50-50 on the first deal because it's a lot of my time and effort. So this deal with Roshan, we did go 50-50. And after that, it's 70-30. But if I'm still bringing the buyer, it would still be 50-50. But if you guys are doing all the work and, I'm just there to kind of guide through the process, then 70-30 from there on, if you want to do deals with me. If not, you can do it on your own. You learn the process. My idea is to get to that first deal using this process. Because once you have the knowledge, then you can go do it again. So that's kind of what I've come up with. If you guys are interested, I can kind of go through the program in a little more detail. I'll stop the recording for that part, but if not, you can email me and I can send you more info.
I'm definitely interested. So if you want to, like you said, go through it now, or I can reach out to you privately, whatever
Yeah,
works for you, my dear.